Tap பண்ணுங்க. ஏதோ ஒரு விண்டோ ஜூம்ல இருக்கும். யூடியூப் இல்ல, ஜூம் இல்ல, விண்டோஸ் இல்ல, மேக். ஜூம் வரணும்பா, ஜூம் ஸ்கிரீன் வரணும். It is somewhere down in the tab பண்ணுங்க.
இதுதான் ஜூம். Alt tab.
Alt tab.
Alt tab.
இது மேக்மா?
மேக்கா?
சரி.
ஃபங்க்ஷன் tab.
இது ஜூம் இது பண்ணுங்க. ஜூம் எனேபிள் பண்ணுங்க. ஜூம் ஸ்கிரீன் யூடியூப் பண்ண ஜூம் வரணும்.
இது யூடியூப்ல இருக்கா? இது ஜூம்ல தான இருக்கு. ஜூம்ல தான்
இருக்காது.
Nice to see you again.
அந்த மேல.
ஓகே.
செகண்ட்.
இதுவா?
செகண்ட்.
ஓகே.
ஓகே.
குட். ஷூர்.
கரெக்ட்டா இருக்கு பாரு. இன்ட்ரோடக்ஷன் கொடுத்த அப்புறம்
நம்ம மியூட்ல இருக்கோம். இல்ல.
அன்மியூட் பண்ணி.
ஓகே.
ஹர ஹர நம பார்வதி பதயே. நமஸ்காரம். ஸ்ரீ குருப்யோ நமக. ஹர ஹர சங்கர ஜெய ஜெய சங்கர. On behalf of M.N. Mahaperiva Satsang, today we are going to have presentation or explanation by Dr. Jambunathan from one of the chapter from Deivathin Kural. We are going to start an introduction about Dr. Jambunathan here. Dr. Jambunathan Ramanathan is an infectious diseases physician and currently a faculty member in the Department of Medicine at Detroit VA Hospital. He has been an active member of KKS Midwest activities for past several years, participating in Maharudrams and Deivathin Kural Satsangams. He is currently the chair of the Education Committee at SVBF North Temple in Farmington Hills, Michigan. He was the editor of SV Temple, Novi, Michigan religious magazine, Sri Panchajanya, for 5 years. He has been conducting lectures on topics related to Sanatana Dharma in the Detroit area for the past 10 years. So we are very fortunate to have Dr. Jambunathan with us today to give explanation on why samskaras. It is in the volume 2 of Deivathin Kural, if you have the Tamil version. Today's explanation will be in English. We encourage all of you to bring in your kids so that they can also understand and take some key notes from what doctor is going to present here. With that said, I'm going to give it to you, doctor. Thank you again for doing this for our satsang.
Jai Shankara, Shankara. Namaskaram to all. Thank you for inviting us for doing this presentation. Today is an auspicious day, Christmas day. So it is still auspicious day on some count. Margari Masam, Dhanur Masam too. Harigihom, Shuklam, Baradaram, Vishnam, Shashivurnam, Sadarbujam, Prasannavadanam, Dhyayet, Sarva Vignopashantehe, Vakradunda Mahakaya, Kodishuri Samaprabha, Nirviktam Kurume Deva Sarvakarishu Sarvada, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat, Parambrahma Tasmai, Sri Gurave Namaha, Jnanananda Mayam Deva Nirmala Spatika Kritim, Adaram Sarva Vidyanam, Hayagrimupas Magem, Tadashiva Shamarambam, Shankarachari Madhyamam, Asmadachari Pariyantam, Vande Guru Paramparam, Shruti Smruti Purananam, Alayam Karunalayam, Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram, Lokashankaram, Periyava Padam Charanam, Shankara Shankara. So the topic today, which we have mutually decided to cover, is the Samskaras chapter in Deivathin Kural Volume 2. Volume 2 covers a lot of chapters, but there is like 10 or 15 chapters which come in a close succession of each other, and Mahaperiva goes in depth about what are samskaras and what we have to be performing to elevate ourselves. And there are the 10 chapters. I have condensed 2 chapters together because one is like literally a half chapter where Periyava actually defines the term samskara, And then there's one chapter where Periyava actually explains in very detail the term samskara. So I have combined these chapters, the definition and the explanation as one chapter. So that will make 9 chapters. And then I chose one chapter called Naishtika Brahmacharya, which comes like 4 chapters after the end of the samskara chapters. But I chose that chapter because Periyava actually closes the loop on multiple points on that chapter. Though it comes like after a gap of 4 or 5 chapters, he discusses a lot of points and summarizes, and he kind of closes the loop on the issues on samskara there. So with that, there'll be 10 chapters. So the 10 chapters which I'll be covering, I'll tell in English and also Tamil. Definition of samskara and explanation of samskara. Samskaram என்றால் என்ன? அடுத்தது the way to spiritual knowledge and heaven. ஆத்ம ஞானம் தேவலோகத்துக்கு என்ன வழி? The 3 planes of existence, 3 types of 3 விதமான லோகங்கள். Gunas, the 8 spiritual qualities which one has to acquire. குணத்துக்கும் கிரியைக்கும் உள்ள தொடர்பு. What is the relationship between guna, which is qualities, and actions? And then samskarangalin பெயர். Just Periyava enumerates the name of the 40 samskaras. And then பெற்றோர்கள் செய்யும் samskaram. So what are these samskaras or the actions which the parents do on behalf of the child? And then Agni Mukyatvam. What is the importance of fire worship in Hinduism? And சிலருக்கு ஏன் இல்லை? Why some people don't have to do or exempted from doing these samskaras? And Naishtika Brahmacharya, which literally will translate as lifelong celibate, but I will use that chapter as a summation of samskaras. So that is kind of the 10 chapters which we will be covering. So before that, I just want to use we cannot use exact terms sometimes for our excellent Sanskrit terms, but the closest Sanskrit term for samskara could be purifying actions or cleansing, cleaning ritual. So you can use one of them as the closest translation, purifying actions or cleansing rituals. So before I actually get into the topic, Periyava stresses the importance of why we should know about these samskaras. And he puts people in 4 categories. And these 4 categories are not in one particular chapter. They're kind of scattered in different places, but I'm trying to put it together. The first category is people who know all these samskaras, which is purifying actions. They know in detail about it, and they try to perform as much as then of all those 40 samskaras to the best of their ability. So one who knows all and performs most or all of them. That is like the topmost category. The second category is somebody who knows all, performs a few, but regrets he is not able to perform the others. And Periyava tells he wants us to be at least under the second category. Periyava is very practical. He says that with the current lifestyle, most of us would not be able to follow these 40 samskaras. And he also doesn't expect that to happen. If it happens, he's very happy. But he says, know the samskaras, perform at least a few of them most important, and at least regret and have remorse that I cannot perform the others. He says that regret and remorse itself goes a long way. The third category, he doesn't specify, but he mentions the 4th category. And when he tells the 4th category, he says the 3rd category is better than the 4th category. The 4th category is people who don't perform samskaras. They discourage other people from performing the samskaras. They in fact ridicule and condemn the samskaras. So that is the 4th or the more inferior group who don't perform it. They also discourage it. They also condemn it. The 3rd group, he says, as a passing point, rather than condemning these samskaras, even if you be quiet and don't discourage others, that is itself better. So the 4 categories is knowing all, performing all. Second category is knowing all, performing few, regretting that you cannot perform the others. 3rd category is at least simply being neutral, not causing discourage or problems for others performing it. 4th category is the most inferior, not performing it and also condemning it and discouraging others. So these are the 4 levels which Periyava says. Now we come to the term definition of samskaras. So here the term samskara, Periyava gives a definition. He uses 2 definitions of samskara. One he takes from Nyaya Shastra and one he takes from Dharma Shastra. According to Nyaya Shastra, which is the science of logic, Periyava quotes actually then the sloka itself, which I'm not trying to quote here. And it basically samskaras means mental impressions. That's one definition. So let's say you go and visit some place, and Periyava gives this graphic example. You go to Kashi Vishwanath temple, you have darshan of Kashi Vishwanath, you have darshan of Ganga, then you come back to your own hometown, and a few years later you go to some other place, and that place has a small vigraha of Kashi Vishwanath. Like some of our temples have Kashi Vishwanath linga in like Meenakshi temple, other temples. Or when you see that Kashi Vishwanath temple, you immediately recollect, oh, I went to Kashi itself 5 years ago, and your memory comes back at that time of your experience there. So this is basically you already have a mental impression, and the mental impression then comes out as an expression. So to have an expression, you should already have an impression. So these mental impressions which are created by your previous activities or experiences, that is also called samskara. So that is one definition of samskara, is mental impressions which has been formed by previous activities and experiences. The second samskara definition is what Periyava is going to actually explain in the next 10 chapters. Samskaras can also be interpreted in Sanskrit as one which perfects a thing. So, and he actually splits the word. And so, in fact, Shamkara, Samskara means one, Samskritam. He gives the example of the word, even Sanskrit. We call Sanskrit, but it's called Samskritam. Samkritam means one which is well formed. So, Sanskrit is a well formed language. So, that's why it's called Samskritam. And that's we kind of call it a Sanskrit. So, Periyava uses the word that, and that. So, whatever makes a things perfect, whatever makes a things better, that's also called a samskara. So, samskara can be interpreted as a mental impression. Samskara can be interpreted as something, as a thing which makes you better or perfects a particular thing or purifies a thing. So, and Periyava is using the second definition in the rest of the chapters which we are going to cover. So that is the kind of, and then he goes on to explain the term samskara. So that is the definition of samskara. Then he goes to explain in detail the second definition of samskara, which is this purification. So he says that, the Kalpa Sutras, which is one part of the Shadangas, if you go through the 14 Chaturdasha Vidya, which Periyava elaborates in one of the Deivathin Kural, one of them is called Kalpa Sutras or Kalpa Shastra, which explains actually all the procedural details of all the rituals which we do. And karma means doing activity in general. So doing an activity itself is called karma. So karma can again have 2 or 3 meanings. Some people use karma for all the punyas and papas they have accumulated around nalla karma, satkarma, dushkarma, where we use the term karma in the terms of people having bad or good previous, according to life. And karma also means just performing an action. But when you perform an action which purifies you and elevates you, that becomes a samskara. So you can go and ride a bicycle, but riding a bicycle is also a karma only, but is it going to purify you and spiritually elevate you? That is the question. And again, performing good actions alone is not enough. So you can be doing puja at your home, but you are very angry with something which happened in your work, and you are very, very, either angry mood or a depressed mood, and you are still performing the activities. So here the activity is a good activity, but the mental state is not a good mental state. So combining the good activities with a good mental state, which can spiritually elevate you, that is what is called samskara. So Periyava splits that, and he gives an example of, the samskaras in different ways. For example, you have a gem. Let's say you have a ruby or a sapphire, and it drops into the ground when you're walking, and it gets dirtied by mud. You take the gem out, you again clean the dirt, and now the gem again begins to shine. So Periyava is giving this example. Same way, we are all jivatmas. The jivatmas have fallen down and they are covered by dirt. And the process of removing this dirt covering the jivatma. So once this dirt is removed, it can merge with the Paramatma. So the process of removing the dirt, it's like also like cleaning up the gem. So once the gem is already bright, it's only covered by dirt. So you're not doing anything to brighten the gem. All you're doing is covering the dirt around the gem, and the gem automatically begins to shine. So same way, the Jivatma is already a shining thing, but it's covered by dirt. all dirt or impurity from the previous janmas which you have accumulated, and removing this dirt process and bringing it to its pristine purity and helping it merge with the Paramatma, that is called samskara. So the question comes is, we say Paramatma is Vishuddha. Vishuddha means very pure. So if especially in Advaita, we say there is no difference between Jivatma and Paramatma. So if you are in one way, you are telling Paramatma is absolute purity, Parama Pavitra, Vishuddha. Those are the terms which we use in Sanskrit when we describe Paramatma is eternally pure. So, and you are telling Jivatma and Paramatma are not different. Then how come the question comes, this Jivatma is filled with dirt now? Now you are bringing the concept of duality and telling Jivatma is covered by dirt, and this dirt has to be removed so that you can go back to Paramatma. And Periyava tells the example, the Dvaitas and Vishishtadvaitas, they believe the Jivatma is always eternally separate from Paramatma. Even in Moksha, the Jivatma is separate from Paramatma. But in the Advaita Sampradaya, he says, there is this concept of Maya, and because of this Maya, the Paramatma appears to be Jivatma, and that appearing Jivatma definitely has dirt. So it's again, it's only an appearance. I'm not going to go into the philosophical aspect of the Tattva Jnana, but he says this so-called appearing Jivatma is covered by dirt, and that dirt has to be removed, or that impurity has to be removed. And that is done only by performing these so-called samskaras or purifying actions given in the Shastras. And as you go on refining this process and keep on purifying, you will one stage reach the highest level. And Periyava is giving 3 examples to make us understand this. He gives, one is agriculture, other one is the weaving, the cloth weaving, and third one is hair cleaning. He says, even if you take your hair, sometimes we have all the lice in the hair, the kids will have, so you have to take them for a haircut. Then you do some special things to remove all the lice. You put shampoo. So he's giving just a very elaborate example of even cleaning your hair. So even cleaning a hair involves several steps. So this is just for your one body part, you have to do several steps to keep it clean. So the Jivatma also has to go through several processes. And the next example he gives is agriculture. Even in agriculture, you don't get the crop right away. He says you have to first till the soil, and then you got to make the soil very appropriate. And then in the appropriate season only you have to put the seed. And then after the seed, you have to keep watering it, putting manure into it. And then as the seed grows, weeds also grow. You have to remove the weeds periodically. And then comes the harvest season. Then you harvest it. And even after harvest, there's a few procedures done. And then only you get your grain. So he's telling just even for the daily food, the grain which we eat, it has to undergo several processes before it comes to the eating stage. So same way also the Jivatma has to go through these several processes till it comes to the more ripened or the purified stage. And the same way he also goes through the weaving industry, and it is unimaginable how Periyava has all these minute details of what a weaver does. I'm not going to elaborate, but I just gave you 2 examples. One is the hair cleaning example, other one is an agriculture farming a grain, that even for these small things, the food you eat daily and the hair which you clean daily, there is so much protocols you have to follow to keep them clean. And the Jivatma, which has been eternally existing and coming through so many janmas, to make it pure, you have to undergo all these procedural cleaning before it becomes eligible to again be one with the Paramatma. So that is kind of the more detailed explanation of the term samskara. And then he says, so performing action is not the ultimate. He says you do the actions, you come from the impure state to the pure state. That is what we call sattva guna. So when you keep on doing all these qualities, you get to the pure sattva guna. And at one stage, you have to leave even the sattva guna and the activities. So you have to nak karmana na prajayadane nadya kenek amrudatva manashuhu. You have to give all the karmas too. So you keep on doing karmas till you purify yourself. And at one stage, you have to give up all these actions. You also have to give up the good qualities. You become nirguna, he says. So only to become sattva guna, only you can go to nirguna stage. So that is the stage where you try to, and then you learn about all the Vedantas. You do Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, and then you contemplate on the teachings of the Vedanta. and that gives you the Jivan Mukti stage. So that is the stage. So you do these karmas, purify yourself, reach the Sattva Guna state, then leave even the activities and even try to go beyond the Guna state and do the Vedanta Shravana and attain Jivan Mukti. So that is the sequence of events, he says. But he also says that not everybody is capable of achieving this Jivan Mukti. And he says an entity called Krama Mukti. And basically what he says is, people who do all these samskaras very meticulously, all these 40 samskaras, or at least most important of them, and as they do the samskaras and as they develop these good qualities, so it is just not mere ritual. The ritual has to be combined with developing good qualities. So if you do rituals without getting good qualities, also it doesn't work. So the rituals combined with good qualities, if somebody keeps on doing it, this Janma, next Janma and all, he says even if he doesn't gain the Vedantic knowledge, he gets Krama Mukti. That's what Periyava says, which means that is what Ramanujacharya, everybody says, your soul goes to Vaikunta or Kailasha. So you can go there. And there, the Lord itself will give you Vedantic knowledge. And then he says at the Mahapralaya, you become a Nirguna stage is attained. So he gives two muktis. And he says either way, for both you need to follow the samskaras. One, you do the samskaras in earth itself. And in earth itself, you learn the Vedanta. You become a Jivan Mukta. That is one group. The second group is you do samskaras, you don't get spiritual knowledge, you die off before it, but you are attained the level of purity. So it is the God decides your level of purity is enough. He will not give you any birth. He will take you directly to Vaikunta or Kailasha, depending upon who you did the maximum upasana for. And once you go to that particular loka, the Ishvara itself will teach you Vedanta directly. And then you live with that is called Salokyam. You go to the loka there, and then at the Mahapralaya, when the Saguna Ishvara becomes Nirguna Ishvara, you also merge with Nirguna Ishvara. So this is what Periyava says. So Krama Mukti and Jivan Mukti, for both the samskaras help you. So now coming to the next chapter, the Periyava gives example of Devaloka and Atmajnana. So Devalokatukkum Atmajnanatukkum Vali, which is in English, if you want to translate, the way to go to heaven or the way to gain spiritual knowledge. So Periyava gives here a very simple example. He says our human life is mixed with pleasure and pain. Everybody has some, very rarely we find somebody who is having happiness throughout their life. It's happiness and sadness mixed. It might be in different combination for different people. And Periyava says, but everyone's goal is to be happy all the time. Though everyone is in different stages of life, everyone's goal is, even from the simplest person who is living in the hut to somebody who is living in a palace, they want to be happy all the time. That is our ultimate goal. How can I be happy all the time? But we are not able to get it because of all of our karmas. So Periyava says there is only two places where you can be happy all the time. So if you want to be happy or in full bliss all the time, only two places. One, you have to go to heaven, the so-called Swarga Loka. The second is when you get Atma Jnana and you become a Brahma Jnani yourself while you are living on earth, we call it Jivan Mukta. So these are the only two places Periyava says you can be in full unhindered happiness, no break in happiness. One is you go to Swarga Loka. The other one, you become a Brahma Jnani living on earth itself. Then Periyava goes to detail, even discriminate between these two, the difference between Swarga Loka and becoming a Brahma Jnani. And Periyava gives a lot of examples in that particular chapter. He says, okay, going to Swarga Loka, you do all these, whatever there is karmas you do, you go to heaven. But he says heaven is not, though heaven is always a place of pleasure, nobody stays in heaven forever. Even Krishna says in the chapter that they go stay in heaven for some time and they come back to the earth. So he says, even though there is a place called Swarga, though the Swarga is always pleasure, nobody stays in Swarga forever. If it is a human, they go to Swarga, spend some time, and they have to come back to rebirth again to earth. Or even if it is a Deva, like even Indra and Varuna and all the Devas who are all in Devaloka, even for them, it is not permanent. We hear about all the wars. We see a terrestrial war now between Ukraine and Russia. There is also the wars happening in other planes. We don't see them. So, it is beyond our capacity, but there is and he says like Hiranyakasipu drove Indra out of heaven, Mahishasura drove Indra out of heaven. There is stories which you read in Puranas, all these people, how they fought with Indra, some of them, and they occupied the heaven for some time, and Indra was suffering in the earth, and he went to here and there. And so those stories we live in the Purana. So what Periyava is trying to tell is, though Devaloka is a place of pleasure, neither humans who go to Devaloka stay there permanently. And for that matter, the Devas in Devaloka also don't stay there permanently. Even they are driven out periodically from that place by warfare. So he says, though Devaloka is a pleasurable place, it is still not a continuous, unhindered pleasure. So the only place is, he says, you have to go beyond Swargaloka, which is the Brahmaloka or Satyaloka we call. So you have to go to Satyaloka, which is what we said, the Satyaloka is what is divided into Vaikunta and the Kailas and all different components. I don't want to go into the Puranic aspect of that, but the Satyaloka is the place where Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva are in, they have their own territories, and depending upon the Upasana who you do, you end up with one of them. But if you go to that realm, you stay there happily forever. And then at the end of the time, even Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra also at Mahapralaya time, they themselves will disappear and merge with the Nirguna Ishvara. At that time, the people who are in Brahmaloka also will merge with the Nirguna Ishvara. So he says, either you have to go to the Brahmaloka or Satyaloka, or you have to become a Brahmajnani while on earth itself. Only these two will give you permanent happiness. Even going to Swargaloka will give you only like intermediate level of happiness or some temporary happiness, he says. And to achieve this Swargaloka or to go to Brahmaloka or to become a Brahmajnani, you still have to do karmas. So again, Periyava in that chapter says, if you have done all the samskaras appropriately, and then you have developed all the good qualities, and then you have done Vedanta Shravana and attained the Brahmajnana on earth, you become a Jivan Mukta. Or you did all the samskaras, you got the good qualities, but you are not able to do Vedanta Shravana, you go to Brahmaloka and then you get Vedanta knowledge there. But if you did all the karmas, you tried to develop some of the qualities, but you couldn't fulfill all the accomplishments, but your goal was never liberation. Your goal was, I want to be happy. The question is the difference between being happy and being liberated. Liberated means I don't want any more birth. So if your goal was only to do happiness and did all the samskaras, you end up going to Swargaloka. So Periyava differentiates those who did all the samskaras with the goal of being happy end up in Swargaloka. Those who did samskaras with the goal of being liberated but did not gain Vedanta knowledge in earth, they go to Brahmaloka. And those who did all the samskaras and also Vedanta learning in earth with the goal of liberation, they attain Jivan Mukta. So he differentiates Jivan Mukta, Krama Mukta and Swargaloka in that particular chapter. So the next chapter is three planes of existence, where Periyava goes on to the three lokas. And here he differentiates, he puts the three lokas as one category is called Devaloka. The other one is Manushya Loka, which is the Bhuloka where we are all living. And the third category is Naraka Loka, which are the different realms which occur below the earth. We call Patala, Rasatala and all that things. So the Devaloka itself, Periyava says, anything from Swarga, because if you know, we say Bhu, Bhuva, Suva, Maha, Jana, Taba, Satya Loka. Those are the lokas which are above earth. And the Rasatala, Tala, Tala, Mahatala, Patala, Atala, Vitala, Sutala. Those are all the lokas which are below the earth. So Periyava says anything from Swargaloka upwards itself we call Devaloka. So the place where Indra resides is called Swargaloka. And beyond Swargaloka is the above Satya Loka, which I call where Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra or Shiva lives. That is the final goal. That is the final higher state in the realm of existence. Everything above Swargaloka, Periyava categorized as Devaloka. And everything below the earth where people are having more sufferings is called Naragaloka. So he says in Devaloka and upwards, it's always pleasure, which we just discussed in the previous chapter. You are always in pleasure, except Devaloka residence is not permanent. And anything on the earth is always a place where is this mixture of pleasure and pain. And then anything the realms below the earth, we call Narakaloka and everything, it's always suffering. So he says there are places where you're always suffering. There are places where there is mixture of pleasure and suffering. and there is places where there is pure pleasure alone. So these are the three levels of existence. He says pure pleasure, pure suffering, suffering mixed with pleasure. So these are the three planes of existence. And even on earth, Periyava says, even on earth itself, you can find this discrimination. You find like some people who are always in money, power, family, and they seem to be at least pleasurable on their stay on earth. We don't know what is their mental state, but for people looking out, man, he's always successful. He's got money, power, his family is good, and everything is good. And whereas some people on earth are always suffering, they have disease, poverty, family problems. So even on earth itself, we can see varying degrees of people having a lot of pleasure, whereas people having a lot of pain. And you can see those different realms. So within the earth itself, so not only above earth and below earth, but within the earth itself, you can see all these different spectra of things here. And Periyava gives an example of the thermometer in this chapter. And this is very appropriate for today. I was looking at the temperature, if you look at the longitude, Minneapolis today, it says 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Nashville, Tennessee today, it says 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And then down El Paso, Texas, it is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So on the same longitude level, on the same day, you have three places with three different temperatures. So 5 degrees, 30 degrees, 50. Periyava gives this example, and he doesn't give the Nashville example. I'm just giving you because we are all familiar with the US territory. He gives, he says in earth itself, you can find places where in the same day, same time, these people have different temperatures. So this is the same way he wants us to imagine there is at the same time, same day, you can have places where there is pleasure, mixed pleasure and pleasure with suffering. He gives that example. And he says the people like the freezing point, like he compares the place where it is freezing as heaven, the place where it is always boiling hot as hell, and something like moderate temperature as the plane of our existence. So he says, the whole universe is like a thermometer. The freezing point of thermometer you can imagine as the Devalokas. The boiling point you can imagine as the hells, and the moderate temperatures you can imagine as the earthly plane. So the heaven, hell, and the earth are the three planes. And he says, there are, though you don't see him, they are all existent. We don't have the eyes or the divine power to see them, but these planes of existence are there. And he says, like, depending upon when people do a lot of punyas, which is mean good activities during their lifetime, but they didn't gain the Vedantic knowledge, again, coming back to that. So they did a lot of good activities, but they did the good activities with the aim of only being happy, and they didn't gain Vedanta knowledge. Those people are the ones who go to Swargaloka, enjoy Swargaloka for a long time, and they come back to earth to be born. You will be born as son of Ambani. You won't be born as somebody in Kupusami in Kuppam. So he says, because Krishna says the same example, you will be born in a very rich and very aristocratic family also, Krishna says. So the more punyas you have, but the greatest punyasali gets born in a house of a yogi. You might be born of son of Anantaram Dikshidhar itself, or one of the Maha Yogis, that parampara itself will be born. So Krishna says, people who do a lot of punyas, but not attain this Vedantic knowledge and go to Swargaloka, when they come back, there is two paths. Either you come back as an aristocratic family, or you come in the family of Maha Yogis. And there again, you will continue either your pleasure or continue your learning and progress further. So Periyava says there is one route. The second route is people who do a lot of sins throughout their life. They are the ones who go to Naragaloka. And in Naragaloka, they suffer for a long time. And then they come back and they are born in very inferior. They might even be born as insects or animals. And then only after a lot of janmas, they come back to the human birth. So he says this is the path of the Narakaloka. And then people who have done moderate sins and punya, they might be reborn just on the earth itself. So he's the first describing these lokas. And then he's telling what takes you where, how, what procedures. So he's trying to again emphasize the good actions are the ones which take you higher. So he's building up before he's actually talking about the samskaras in these chapters, he's giving all these lokas and all, not for just explaining. He's building up the point that good actions are important. And only if you know the theoretical basis of why good actions are important, you will put more emphasis on doing these good actions. So that is why he's taking all these pains to explain all these lokas and the different route the soul takes after the death of the soul. And he calls, and even then he comes to the point, even if you are born on the earth again, he says the difference between earth and Swarga and Naraka, he puts very simply. He says, if you go to Swarga, they will push you out very quickly after your, as soon as your punya is over. Periyava use the term dobugadir. That is the word itself. He says, dobugadir no heaven tali utruva. That's the exact term he uses in Deivathin Kural. What he says is, even if you go to Swarga, they will drop, they will count the days. Okay, his punya is over. Okay, immediately drop him down back to earth. And Naraka, you will suffer. You cannot plead with Dharmaraja. He will count the days till you have to suffer. Then only he will let you go out of that. So he says, either in Swarga or Naraka, it is not under your control. You either will fall very quickly from Swarga, or you will suffer long time in Naraka. Then only you come to earth. And he's trying to emphasize, earth is the only place, Bhuloka, where you can perform karmas. And he gives the example of food manufacturers. He says, the food is manufactured in some place. The hotels are only distributing the food, which is all the grains, everything comes to the hotel, they food. So he gives the example of Swarga Naraka is like hotels. Hotels are not manufacturing specially grains and all. They just serve the food, they are the distributing place. Whereas the real agricultural place is where the food is actually made. So he compares the earth to the agricultural place where you actually manufacture the food, and the hotels are the place where you distribute the food. So the Swarga Naraka is where only you can get distribution. You cannot create new karmas. So if you're in Swarga or Naraka, you cannot either get more punya or papa. You are only suffering or enjoying the benefits of punya and papa. Only on earth, he calls earth as karma bhumi, the other as bhoga bhumi. Bhoga bhumi means you can only enjoy or suffer, but not create additional karmas. Whereas in earth is the only place, karma bhumi, where you can do some activities and either get good karmas or bad karmas. Then he comes specifically to the earth also. He says, not every place in earth is a karma bhumi. Unfortunately, he doesn't list America as a karma bhumi there. He lists only India and also predominantly Dakshina Desha as the place of karma bhumi. So today, as of today, though Americans in America, we perform more Maharudras and Sadachandis in India, it is still not officially listed as a karma bhumi. So he says, even in earth, and then not only says, even in earth, only some special places are karma where you can do karmas, and also only special times. For example, he gives the example of Shraddha, or doing the yearly ritual for your parents who have died. He said, oh, I'm working today. I will go to work. I'll come in evening and do Shraddha. That's not acceptable. Shraddha has to be done only in Madhyanika time, which is middle of the day, like around 10 or 11 or 12 in the morning. That is the appropriate time. So just because he says you have to take the day off and do the Shraddha maybe, but you cannot tell I'm doing Shraddha, but I'm going to go to work from 8 to 4. I'll come at home at 5. Between 5 to 7, I'm going to do Shraddha ceremony for my father. He says that is not acceptable. So what he's trying to tell is, earth is the only place where you can do karma. But even in earth, it's only selected places which will give you benefit of the karma. So he's telling he's not telling that you cannot do karmas everywhere, but the maximum benefit is achieved only in certain places, and also only doing it in the appropriate times. So even the karma has to be done at the right place, at the right time to get the maximum benefit. So that is what he's trying to emphasize. So he starts the chapter with the 3 levels of existence. Then he comes to the Bhulokas, the karma bhumi. And in the karmas also he says, it has to be done at the right place, at the right time to reap the maximum benefits. So this is the build-up he is giving about this in this chapter. And then he goes to the next chapter called Gunamum Kiriyaikum Thodarpu. What he says is, I'm going to talk about all these rituals, but I also told you how to develop good qualities. So we said one is doing the activities, the other one is developing good qualities. Gunam is quality, and the rituals or activities is the karma, the samskara. So he said that he's trying to link how actions will develop good qualities for you. Hinduism is the only religion which clearly says there is only 3 ways which can change a person. A lot of people are doctors here. We have some patients who smoke. Even after getting cancer, they will smoke. Habits don't change. So people say only 3 things. One is satsanga. Satsangam is what we are doing now. You talk about scriptures, do prayers together. The other one is sat ahara, satvika ahara, what you eat. So there is even Bhagavad Gita, there's a full chapter where Krishna describes what food you have to eat. So the type of food you eat also can change your mental makeup. And the third is sat karma, doing the good actions. So sat karma satsanga, satvika ahara. Those are the only three things which can change your behavior. Nothing else can. You can take medicines for depression, everything. They are only like putting band-aid on the surface. But if you have to change your inner behavior, there is one guru called Jakki Vasudev, is very famous now, Isha Sadguru. He says inner re-engineering. There is a term used, inner re-engineering. Basically, what means you have to turn your entire behavioral process, whatever the bad qualities you have to remove and get these good qualities inside you. So that is the inner re-engineering which you have to do. And Periyava says, first he gives the example of Puranas. So he says, okay, these are the good karmas. And he says every religion also says good, even Christianity says be compassionate to everybody. Buddhism says all the good qualities. So he says there is a lot of religions which are prescribing all the good qualities. So he says that is common to all religions. Whether you are following Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism, developing these good qualities is kind of unanimously agreed by most of these religions and the religious, whoever the religious gurus are. But he says, in our Sanatana Dharma, not only we say what are the good qualities, we actually tell you how to get those good qualities. So there is difference between telling you these are the good qualities, but practically helping you to get the good qualities. So Periyava says we have a lot of Purana stories first. We read Mahabharata, Duryodhana story, Yudhishthira story, Rama, Ravana, where we see people with good qualities suffer, but the end they are victorious. And people who have bad qualities, though they are victorious in the beginning, they suffer in the end. So he says we get a lot of this by the stories. What we get is good people are successful at the end. Bad people suffer at the end. This seems to be the simple moral, but by constantly telling us these stories, they are trying to teach us be good, do good actions. So they are giving you examples first. So first they are telling you what are the good qualities. The next step they are telling you is they are giving you examples based on stories, how good actions really make you successful at the ultimate end. And then they are giving you these Dharma Shastras. Okay, now you know what are the good qualities. You also have role models from your Rama or Yudhishthira or whoever, the Harishchandra, whatever good role models you have in Puranas who you should emulate. But then how do you emulate them? He says, that is why the actions come. He says, if you constantly do these actions and these purifying actions called samskaras, the rishis have been able to see in their intuition and they're giving it. So though it seems to be a simple ritual on the outside, these have been gotten under deep intuition by the rishis. So when you do this with faith and appropriate turn as it goes, even without your knowledge, your behavior will change. So Periyava is telling that these samskaras are, if you do it as prescribed in a regular way, over time, you will notice the change yourself. So he's telling that, so he's telling first we tell you what the good qualities are. We give you examples from stories, what the good qualities are and how you catch and how people are successful. And third, we also give you a method by following the so-called purifying actions on a regular basis. You develop this good quality. So he's giving the link between the doing these shastric actions and performing these actions meticulously over time. You will develop these qualities. So he says this is, and he gives a lot of examples in the chapter, but because of short of time, he gives a few examples how the activities can change you. But because we have like other chapters to cover, I'm going to stop with this chapter. But basically all he's telling is, not all, like I was giving a previous example. If you keep riding a cycle every day, you might get healthy physically, but that's not going to change your ultimate behavior. So only certain actions which are done according to the Shastras will change your behavior and your qualities over time. So that's what Periyava was trying to emphasize in the chapter. So the next chapter is, I'm going to actually list the samskaras. What are the samskaras and what are the ashtagunas? Periyava gives one chapter for samskara and one chapter for the gunas. In fact, he talks the guna or the quality chapter first and then the samskara chapter next. So he says 8 gunas, ashta gunas, he says. These are the 8 qualities which you should try to gain during your life on earth. And for gaining these 8 qualities, you have to perform these 40 samskaras or the 40 purifying actions. So then he says this 40 samskaras plus these 8 gunas. So it is 48. This combination of 48 is what is going to give you either Krama Mukti or Jivan Mukti, which is either liberation while living on earth or liberation by going to Brahmaloka and getting final liberation at the time of Mahapralaya. So he says this 40, there's a sloka which he quotes directly from the Gautama Dharma Sutras. 40, the 40 samskaras and the 8 spiritual qualities or 8 divine qualities, you can call them, we call in Atma Gunam in Tamil. And if you want to translate in English, you would say divine qualities or 8 spiritual qualities, which you have to develop. And then he lists all those 8 qualities. So I'm just going to tell the name and then give a brief description of all those 8. So the 8 gunas are, he lists in the order. Daya, Daya means compassion. Shanti, the Shanti is with a K, not a S. Shanti or Shama, it's called, you can call it Shanti or Shama. It is KSHAMA or KSHANTI. That is actually forgiveness. So having a forgiving attitude. So one is compassion, other one is having a forgiving or a tolerant attitude. Anasuya, which is lack of jealousy. Saucha, which is purity. Anayasa, which is being light or being always in a very, not being stressed out, taking everything in a light, being in a very, not having any like deep problems in your heart, always being light-hearted, we say, Anaya or effortless. Anayasa could be effortless or light-hearted. And then Mangala. Mangala means always doing good and bringing good. Akarpanya, which is lack of miserliness. And Asfuruha, which is lack of attachment. So he says these are the 8 qualities which is prescribed, and he gives example from both Apastamba Dharma Sutra and also Gautama Dharma Sutra, where all these qualities are mentioned. So Daya, Shama, Anasuya, Saucha, Anayasa, Mangala, Akarpanya, Aspuruha. So these are the 8 qualities. And he gives a brief description about all. Daya means compassion. Compassion means having, about all, and we say compassion to Sarva Bhuta Hitam, he says, not compassionate just to humans. That is why some people, they'll be very compassionate. They will even, make a big fight that the dogs are being beaten by stones. They will say, I want to protect the dogs. I want to protect the cat, but they will go and eat goat. They will go and eat beef. So they will say, I want to protect the dog. I want to protect the cat. They will make even big show about that on the road, but they will also go and eat non-veg. Periyava says, when you are compassionate, it's called Sarva Bhuta Hitam, not only to humans, to all animals, everywhere you should show compassion. That is what is the ultimate compassion, he says. So, and he says, because today is Christmas Day, he says specifically in the chapter, Daya is what was mainly propagated by Christ. In fact, he says in the chapter, and since it's Christmas Day, I want to emphasize that. He says, one of Christ's main teaching was developing compassion to all. So he says the first teaching is the Christ teaching. It is specifically mentioned that in the chapter also. But again, Christ lived 2000 years ago, but our scriptures have existed before, but he's just bringing some relevance there. And next he says Shama. Shama means forgiving attitude. And then here Periyava tells there is Shama, he interprets in 2 ways. One, people have sufferings in their own life. You have money problem or health problem or financial, some problem in your life, but you don't take it deeply. You still are able to live lightly out of it. Like some people, when they get problems, they're always angry, short-tempered. So one is to deal with your own problems in a very, evolved manner without getting too much upset. But he says the other extreme of Shama is somebody who has done wrong to you, forgiving him and tolerating him is the ultimate Shama, he says. So he divides Shama into 2. One is living with your own problems, but not getting too upset with that. But the highest category of Shama is who has done harm to you, you still are able to forgive him and tolerate him. That is Shama, he says. Then Anasuya. Asuya means jealousy. Anasuya means lack of jealousy. And he gives the example of Atri Maharishi's wife. He's called Anasuya, and he specifically makes a comment. Everybody calls her Anusuya. Anusuya is wrong. Anasuya is correct. He says Asuya is jealousy. Anasuya means no jealousy. So since Atri Maharishi's wife had no jealousy to anybody, he was called Anasuya. So he gives an example. Jealousy usually happens only with people who are better than you. You rarely get jealousy with people. You don't get jealousy with the driver driving your car. You get jealousy only with your neighbor who owns a Lexus or a BMW or something. So jealousy always comes only with higher people. So he says, now he divides. Compassion is for all. Forbearance is for people who have done problem to you. And Anasuya, lack of jealousy, is people who are higher than you, you don't feel jealous about them. So he divides them into 3 categories. So Daya, Shama, Anasuya. Saucha means purity. Purity in mind, purity in body, purity in speech. So the Mano, Vak, Kayam, having purity in all 3 levels is called Saucha. So and then it says external purity is the most important. You start with external purity, and he gives the bath or whatever things you need to keep yourself externally pure. That's most important. But then you also work over time to get mental purity and also the purity in your speech. So, and he gives a little bit detailed explanation of Saucha from Manusmriti and other things. But just for your understanding, and also Patanjali Maharishi mentions Saucha during his Yama Niyama. So he quotes the example of Patanjali Maharishi, Manusmriti, where Saucha is mentioned as a very important, just purity or cleanliness. And cleanliness is cleanliness of body, mind, and speech. And then comes Anayasa. Anayasa is being effortless or light-hearted. And Periyava gives, now he's telling us, don't get confused. I am telling you to do so many activities, but at the same time, I'm telling you to be effortless. So effortless means jaliya irukkiradhu. Onnum pannama jaliya irukkuda, anayasama irukkaangiradhu. But here Periyava says, you should not confuse. I want you to do all the actions. So physically, you should be active. Mentally, you should be light-hearted. So he says, you should be always in a jovial mood, always in an effortless manner, though you're doing all these activities. So that is what he says, his being is. So anayasa means always being light in your mind. That's what he gives the example. So don't, he says, when I tell anayasa, Periyava jali irukka soltarna, jali is only in the mind, but physically you have to do all the actions. He again makes that point very clear in that point. And then he says, the next one is Mangala. Mangala means doing good to others and bringing good. When you go to a place itself, they should feel, oh, this guy has come, he's good. We are not of that category. But when people who are able to spread goodness, that is what is called. So Mangala means you are good, but you also spread goodness wherever you go. That is the ultimate definition of Mangala. He goes step by step. Periyava, I am giving you the most distilled version. Each of these gunas, Periyava takes time to explain all these things. But because of the time, I'm trying to constrain all these chapters. But the ultimate definition of Mangala is being good, but bringing goodness to wherever you go. That is called Mangala. Pungum Mangalam Engum Tangugan. It tells it that now your goodness should be overflowing, and it should, wherever you go, the goodness should be overflowing all over you. And then he says, Akar, and then at this time he gives, Periyava uses his language skills. He uses the term light, L-I-G-H-T, light. And Periyava gives his, extraordinary knowledge of English. The word light can be used in two terms. Light means being less weight, light-hearted. This is a light. This is not heavy. This is light, we say. So light can be used in telling, which is less heavy. And the light can also be in the bright light, which is the light which all of us have. So he says, in Anayasa, you should use the other light, being light in mind. Whereas in Mangala, you should be a light to others. Wherever you go, you should bring glow there. So he uses the term light to use both. Anayasa is lightness in the mind, whereas Mangala is you being a light for others. And then Akarpanya and Aspurha. Karpanya means Karpanya dosha pragat Subhava. When Krishna complains to Arjuna, you got Karpanya dosha in the Bhagavad Gita chapter. Karpanya means miserliness, being miserly. Kanjan, that is the exact word in Tamil. Kanjanda, Romba Karumida, Karumi, Karpanya, which means miserly. They are not willing to be broad-minded, broad-hearted. So he says Akarpanya means one who is always generous-hearted. He is always generous. If you go there, if I go there, they will he will give you something more than what you expected. So Karpanya means one who is miserly. Akarpanya means one who is very broad-hearted or very, a donating attitude. They want to give money to other people. They want to give knowledge to other people. They want to do physical service to other people. They are always large-hearted in doing service to others. And then, so when Krishna says to Akarpanya means Here, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you became a miser for yourself because Arjuna says, I can't fight. I'm going to sit down in the chariot. Why are you being like miserly? He says, because he has become a miser for himself. One who is a great fighter telling, I cannot do anything. And he sits down. So Krishna says, you got karpanya dosha. And then spruha means attachment. Having attachment to everything is called spruha. Aspruha means being detached. So he says, you should not be attached to anything in detail in this earth. He says, the moment you get attachment, and he gives Buddha. So he says, Buddha's main principle was, asai, desire is the root cause of all evil. So get rid of desires. Be detached from everything. So he says the first teaching, Daya, is the main teaching of Christ. The last teaching, Aspruha, which is lack of desire or lack of attachment, is the main teaching of Buddha. So he says our teaching includes everything from Christianity to Buddhism. Everything is there. We are not only list the qualities, we also tell them how to develop those qualities. So he says this detachment, and he gives two nice slokas from Tamil, one from Tirukural and one from Tirumandiram. Patratran patrinai patriga patru vidakku. He says, how do you get detachment means? He says, Lord Shiva is the most detached person. If you catch hold of his feet, you pray to him every day, one day you will get detachment itself. Because the maximally detached person, if you hold his feet, you will get detachment yourself over time. So Patratra Patrinai Patriga means the one who is maximally detached, you get attached to him and you will get detachment over time. That is the sloka which Valluvar says in Tirukural. But then Periyava quotes, okay, you are attached to Shiva so much, you are holding on to his feet all the time. But Tirumandaram says, Asai Arumin, Ishanod Ayinum, Asai Arumin. So Tirumandaram says that go one more step. Even leave your attachment to Shiva at one stage. Then only you will attain the Nirguna Mukti. So he says detachment starts by attaching to the Lord. And then at one time, even the Saguna Ishvara attachment you should leave. Then only you will get the ultimate detachment, it says. So he quotes this example of detachment from first detachment from material pleasures to going to spiritual, to divine attachment, and from divine attachment to no attachment. He takes the different stages. So he says this Aspurga. So these are the 8 important qualities which one has to develop. And the whole thing is, as you keep doing the samskaras, you will develop those qualities. That's what Periyava was trying to tell. So the next chapter, he actually lists the samskaras. So we talk about purifying actions, what are these purifying actions? So he says, these purifying actions go from Nisheka to Dahana. Dahana means the final birth, death rate. You know, somebody who is dead, you go and burn them. I know that is the final death rate. Nisheka is, you know, to put it in English, it is the first night. Garbhadana, which is Shanti Muhurta. He says, before the conception of the embryo. Not before the conception of the embryo, till the death, these 40 samskaras are listed all the way from here to that. So, right, our Hinduism starts, you know, the Christ's birth we call Immaculate Conception. That was the term used for Immaculate Conception for Christ's birth. Periyava says that in Hindu religion, we want everybody to be Immaculate Conception. Everybody want to be pure right from birth. So he says that the samskaras he puts into 3 categories. One, which happens right from the time of the couple getting married and before they, you know, go to form a kid, all the way to of having Upanayana. So that is one spirit of samskaras, he says. And then next one, he says, having marriage and performing the yajnas is the other set of categories, he says. And then between this Upanayana and marriage, there is a small category. So these are the 3 groups, he splits them. One group is from Garbhadana to Upanayana is one group. Vivaha to the Panchamaha yajnas, Paka, Havir, and Soma yajnas as the other group. And there is a small intermediate category between Upanayana and Vivaha as the 3rd group. So these are how he classifies the 40 samskaras. I will first list them and then he briefly describes all of them. One is Garbhadana, Humsavana, Simanda, Jatakarma, Namakarma, Annaprashana, Shaula or Chudakarma, and Upanayana. So these are the 8 samskaras or the 8 purifying actions. This is one list. And then 4 vratas, Agneya, Saumya, Prajapatya, Vaishwadeva. Samavardhana is the intermediate group, the 5 rituals between Upanayana to Vivaha. These are the 5 groups. 8 plus 5, 13. Vivaha is marriage. Even marriage itself, he said, is a purifying ceremony. So that is the 14th one, he says. And then he lists 5 Panchamaha Yajnas, which everybody has to do every day. And then 7 Bhaga Yajnas, 7 Havir Yajnas, and 7 Soma Yajnas. So 7 plus 7 plus 7 is 21. And the 5 Panchamaha Yajnas is 526. So you have 8 from Garbhadana to Upanayana. The 4 Vratas and Samavardhanam is 513. Vivaha is 14. And then 5 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7, 26 is 40. So that is the list of the 40 samskaras he gives you, he tells. And he actually, except for those Havir, Soma Yajna, Bhaga Yajnas, he gives only a brief description because he tells, I know most of you are not doing it, and I know most of you will probably not even do it. So that's why I'm only going to enumerate them. But he says that is what Periyava says, the second category. At least know these samskaras, perform a few, and at least regret and remorse. I know these have to be performed, but I cannot perform them. He says even having the knowledge and regret itself goes a long way. So that is why he's enumerating. He says, I'm enumerating the samskaras, though I know you're not going to do it, but at least having the knowledge and that these have to be done, and that you cannot perform it, that itself is going to help you, he said. So now all these 40 samskaras he has listed. So I will just briefly touch each of them. Is Garbhadana is what is called Nisheka ceremony, which is after the marriage has happened, and the so-called first night or what are the Shanti Muhurta. He says even the conjugal rights between the husband, the newly wed husband and wife, has to be done with only there is a special homa they do. And what Periyava says is the father, the preemptive father and the preemptive mother, they have their own doshas. Not all of us are pure. All of us have impurity and doshas or defects in some way or the other. So he knows that when you are born in earth itself as a human, everybody is some defects. So he says there is defects can be transformed from the parents. Some of the kid itself is going to be born. They are going to come with their own baggage. You come with your own baggage. The kid also, whoever is going to come to you, carries their own pure samskaras are coming. What he says is by doing the special ceremonies from Garbhadana to the Upanayana to Shaula, you are reducing at least the impact of the karma transference from the parents to the child, and also trying to clean even the child's karmas before it comes to Upanayana. So again, not all cleaning is going to happen, but some of them is going. So he says the defects of the father, he says, are called Baijigam. And the defects of the mother he called Garbigam. So the Baijigam and the Garbigam are the defect which come from the father and defect which come from the mother. So doing this Garbhadana, Pumsavana, Simanta, Namakarma, Jatakarma and all are supposed to minimize the Baijiga dosha and the Garbiga dosha, which is the defects transformed or transferred from the parents to the coming jiva can be minimized, he says. So that is the overall effect. So, and he also emphasized these are all done by parents. So the Garbhadana ceremony, Pumsavana, Simanta, Jatakarma, Namakarma, Annaprashana, Shaula are all actually done by parents, but the parents are doing it for the kid. So these samskaras, so your parents should have done for you, and you are doing the samskaras for your kids, so that they are minimizing or purifying the jiva in the kid right till it comes to Upanayana. So these are ceremonies. So he gives a separate chapter, Petrorgal Pandum Samskaram. The samskaras are listed, but these first 7 samskaras are not done by the kid itself. They are done by the parents on behalf of the kid. And in Annaprashna means you are making the kid eat the first food. And Chaula Karma means you are keeping the shika, which is the, we call the kudumi in Tamil, we call shika. So creating that is called the Chaula. So the Garbhadana is basically before the first night, they perform this particular homa, and only at the appropriate time, the couple is supposed to be, having the conjugal rights, and that produces the appropriate kid. He says, without doing this, and he says, Periyava gives very elaborately, he says, now people advertise first night in movies, first night, they don't have no shame of discussing first night everywhere, but they have shame of doing this homa. He said we should be only shameful of not doing the homa. You should not advertise. You should not even tell other people when the first night is happening. You do first night within your home. You do the Shantikar. Don't. He says you don't have shame for doing other things, but you have to do shame for doing this homa. He says you advertise first night to everybody on earth, but that is the one you should not advertise. And you don't want to do this particular homa. He says so. That is the important thing. He says is that is during the Garbhadana appropriate time. That is called Shanti. We call it as Muhurta itself. So he says that should be done. And then the Pumsavana is after the lady becomes pregnant. On the third month, you do it. And again, these karmas, it doesn't describe them in detail, but he says that the Pumsavana is done in the third month, and the Simanta is done in 6th or 8th month. He says sometimes the people combine together, but the ideal they should be done separately. The third month of pregnancy, you do the Pumsavana ceremony, and the 8th month or 6th to 8th month, anytime you do the Simanta ceremony. And again, these are all done for the mother, but it is actually, the effect is only on the kid. So we doing these things for the mother or the thing, but the effect is only for purifying the jiva, which is already coming in the embryo there. And then the Jata karma, he says, is after the kid is born, as soon as the delivery has happened, the father is to do a special homa and some danas, they're giving charities. So doing this particular homa, dana and chanting certain mantras as soon as the kid is born, that is called Jata karma. And Nama karma is what you do like 10 or 11 days later, where you give a name to the kid. And he also goes in detail what names you should choose. And he says, first of all, don't choose name like Longfellow, and all that things. Choose a good name like Narayana or all the gods' name. And then he says, after you keep Narayana, you call him Nana. That is also wrong. Keep the good name and also tell the full name. It is good for you, good for the kid. So he goes about this Nama karma in detail. So like I said, for constraint of time, I'm not going to describe everything, but at least give you the gist there. So, but he says these days, Jata karma, Nama karma, they are combining. So, but he says, ideally, Jata karma is done as soon as the kid is born, and Nama karma is done 11 days later. So he knows all the practicality. He says now Pumsavana and Simanta is combined. He says, whatever you do, at least you're doing it, I'm happy. But he says 3rd and 6th and 8th month, but if people are combining, at least do it that way. Same way, Jata karma, Nama karma are to be done separately, but you are combining, okay, you do it at least that way. So the Jata karma, Nama karma is, so that is what he's telling. And then the Annaprashana is the first feeding for the kid. You're giving, because up to 6 months, the child is supposed to subsist only on the breast milk. And only from breast milk, you are going to slowly transition to solid food. So the transition period from the breast milk to solid food, that is also a special ceremony you have to do. That is called Annaprashana. And then comes the Chaula karma, he says, and he gives very big description for this Chaula karma, this Shika. He says, all I see is crop. Everybody has a crop. And he says this crop is not even approved by any of our religion, in any Shastras. I have a crop, you have a crop, so I can't even complain about anybody. So the point is, he says, we are not supposed to do, when the kid, we do Motadi Gardan, we do a big ceremony. We take, as soon as the kid is born, we do, we take the first year, we do this, we take them to Parani or Tirupati and we do a big tonsuring of the head. Everybody does in their family, everybody does their own Kula Devatas or Ishta Devatas. As soon as the kid becomes 1 year or 2 years, each one you go into it. He said, you are not supposed to completely remove all hair. You are supposed to keep the tuft of hair only in the center and remove the other hair. And that too is to be done using certain Vedic mantras. So the Shika, keeping the Shika itself is a big ceremony. And he goes very elaborate on that, and he gives he gives the advantage of having a Shika, and he's telling how the Shika is, basically what he's trying to summarize is, if you have a house, you need a strong roof. If you don't have a good roof, you're going to be having leaking, or you're going to feel too hot, too cold, rainwater is going to come to your house. Yeah, a good house needs a strong roof. He says the Shika is like a roof for you. If you have a good Shika, it is like a roof, it's going to protect you, it is going to elevate you. So this Shiko Dharanam is very important for him, he says. And he says, not only that, first of all, people do tonsure fully, they don't keep Shika. And then even if they keep Shika, they don't do a crop. He says the only time you can take a Shika is when you take sannyasa. So that is the only time. So you keep Shika for especially the male kids. And then when you take sannyasa, that is the time you can give the Shika. So as long as he says, Shika is needed for even a marital life as well as Vedic life. So only if you are not having a marital life and a Vedic life, which is what a sannyasi has, you can take the Shika off. So that is the most elaborate thing he describes. But there are other points too, which he tells about the Shika, but just I want to give the gist of it. So this is all the 7 karmas, the Garbhadana, Pumsavana, Simanta, Jata Karma, Nama Karma, Annaprashana, and Chuda Karma or Chaula, which is the keeping of the tuft. And then the 8th is Upanayana, which is the ceremony, and he goes in very detail about the Upanayana. He says the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, all of them should get it. Only the bonds in the Sudra, this is the Varnashrama, which people, I don't know how much people are accepting of that today, but he is very clear on that, the Varnashrama Dharmas. And he says only the 4th caste is not eligible, and then he has one specific chapter for that. The chapter he says, why are some people exempted? And he gives a very detailed explanation. Why are some people exempted from these ceremonies also? In a very logical way, he gives it. But he's telling the Upanayana ceremony, and he tells you what age you have to do it. And, and then he says, this is the stage. The Upanayana is the first stage where the kid starts doing activities for himself. So the first 7, the parents are doing for the kid. Only in Upanayana, the kid begins to chant the Gayatri mantra. So he says, at that time, he gives a nice example, which I want to quote, because this is Dhanurmasam, Margari, Tirupavai people chant. In Tirupavai, Andal says, if you tell the God's name by the mouth, you think of him in the heart, and you offer him a flower. Chuti, Mananal, Manadanal, Sindit, Vainal, all the sins will go. She give a flower to the God, meditate him on the heart, and chant his name. So she gives giving the flower is action by the body. Meditating on the heart is the mind action. And telling the name of the God is a verbal action. So you do all the 3, mind, body, and speech. So Periyava says, all of us have defects in all the 3, mind, body, and speech. So the Upanayana is the first stage where the Gayatri mantra is taught to the kid, and he begins to perform all these argyas and tarpanas, and he's also asked to meditate on the stage. So Upanayana is the first stage where you start giving this 3-fold action for the mind, body, and speech. So that is when the kid starts doing his own karmas for his own purification. So this Trikarana Suddhi starts with Upanayana and with the Gayatri Mantra Upadesha. And he says that, that is, and then he gives more details on Upanayana, but I'm going to stop with that and tell that is the most important ceremony. And once you do the Upanayana, you become eligible to do the other things. And then the next comes the other set of the karmas, the 4. He says, then you do Veda Dhyanam. So after you do Upanayana, he wants to learn the Vedas. So the whole purpose of doing Upanayana is to do Sandhya Vandanam and do Veda Dhyanam. It gives you the eligibility to learn the Vedas after the Upanayana. And then you go and learn the Vedas. And he says the Vedas have different kandas, and each kanda has a particular rishi in charge. So when you're doing this Veda kandas, as soon as you finish that particular kanda, you're supposed to do a vrata for the particular rishi. So even in people who do Brahma Yajnam, Agnim Kandarishim Tarpayami, Somam Kandarishim Tarpayami, and then Prajapadim Kandarishim Tarpayami, Vishwan Devan Kandarishim Tarpayami, those 4 things will come. So the Agni Rishi, the Soma Rishi, the Prajapati Rishi, and then the Vishwan Devan or Vaishwa Deva. So those are the 4, and each Rishi. So as soon as you finish that particular kanda of the Veda, there is a special vrata you do, suppose for that Rishi. So those are the 4 vratas. And then a person who has completed learning all the Vedas and has done all these 4 vratas, then he is ready to leave the Gurukulam of the Guru and is supposed to embark on the family life after that. And before completing the studies, he does a special snana. It is actually a bath ceremony, but is done with the Vedic mantra. So you do bath every day. Even during Gurukula, you're doing bath every day. But this is a special bath which you do at the completion of all the Veda Dhyayana, and that is called Samavardhana. So you do that particular bath, the ritualistic bath with all Vedic mantras, then you are a graduate. Like you have graduation ceremony, that birth is called, that particular bath, the ritual Vedic bath is called the graduation ceremony for you. So then you are graduated from learning Vedas, you are free to move. And there Periyava says, completing Samavartana, and before going to marriage, he does the Kashi Yatra, and he gives a very jokey example of Kashi Yatra. Today, people do the guy comes right from America, night before, they will do one Kashi Yatra in the morning, and then immediately the Muhurta will happen. But he says, normally you do Samavartana, you really go to Kashi, you come back, then only you are eligible for Vivaha. So that is what is the actual procedure, he says. But he says, he said, what, at least you're doing something, Kashi Yatra, he says, and he's just telling in a joking way, but this is what it is. Like I said, again, he emphasizes, I am not expecting you to do all the things, but at least know the things and, at least try to follow as much as you can. That is again the repeated message, what he says. And so this is the Samavartana, and then you go for Vivaha. And then the Vivaha actually is not even describing in these 10 chapters. He gives a separate description for Vivaha in another place. But the marriage ceremony is done, and once the husband and wife are together, and he says the main reason for marriage is actually for doing the Vedic karmas. Getting the children is the next. Enjoying pleasures is the third. He says that is not the most important thing. The marital, he says the first thing for the marriage ceremony is doing all the Vedic rituals, including this Agnihotra and whatever things it is being listed. And then it is for getting a good children. And then only the pleasures come only as the last category, he says. So, but that is the Vivaha ceremony, he says. And then after the Vivaha ceremony, he says about the Panchamaha. So that is the one I want a little bit elaborate, because that is what we can do. The Panchamaha is which practically what we can do in this day-to-day life is only that. So I will talk about that. The Panchamaha which probably most of you know, are the Brahma Yajna, Deva Yajna, Pitru Yajna, Manusha Yajna, and Bhuta Yajna. Those are the 5 yajnas or sacrifices. And this is what he says practically in this day and age, I expect you to do these 5 yajnas at the most possible. So have your Upanayana, learn whatever small Vedas you can, and do the Brahma Yajna. This is what his main emphasis is. So the Brahma Yajna part is actually continuous learning. Like in medicine, we call the continuous medical education, we call CME. So daily learning the Vedas or even learning the Puranas. So people read Sundarakanda, they read Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata, they read Brahmanda Purana from Lalita Sahasranama and other things. So he says, reading these Vedas, learning the Vedas, teaching to others, learning the Puranas, they all come under the Brahma Yajna. Because even in Brahma Yajna, we say Rigvedam Darpayami, Samavedam Tarpayami, Atharvedam Tarpayami, Kalpam Tarpayami, Itihasa Puranam Tarpayami. So these are all what we are supposed to learn. So the learning of the Vedas, chanting the Vedas, learning the Puranas, learning the Dharma Shastras, Kalpa, all come under the Brahma Yajna. But the main component is Vedic learning. So at least learn some Vedas, Rudram, Chamakam, Purusha Suktam, and try to tell little bit of it every day. Even half an hour you come from work, do Rudram chanting. So he says something like that. Do the Vedic learning and do some Vedic chanting every day. That is the main part of the Brahma Yajna. Then comes the Deva Yajna. Deva Yajna is basically all the, he puts like 5 or 6 under that category. One is doing the Sandhya Vandanam is the most important Deva Yajna. You have to do Sandhya Vandanam as much as possible 3 times a day. Sandhya Vandana is the most important Deva Yajna. Then he says, if you are doing the Upasana and Agnihotra, which will come under the Pakavir Yajnas, that is another Deva Yajna. Panchayatana Puja, some people do in their house, they do only Sri Chakra Puja, whatever your family does, or doing Panchayatana Puja or Vishnu Puja, whatever your family tradition, doing a puja for a particular god. Even if it says, he gives very, even short, he gives you like brief, how can you briefly do puja even during travel, he gives very nicely. And again, I'm not elaborating because of the time constraint, but the puja ceremony emphasizes this is something which you can do. And he says, even if you travel, you can take the Salagrama and or the Badalinga with you. And he says you can have dry bilva leaves or dry Dolasi leaves, or you can have even dry grapes for doing Naivedya. He gives very simple ways of how you can do puja even while you are traveling, but doing a puja every day. And finally doing japa, like Ashtakshari, whatever mantra japa, these all come under Deva Yajna. So Sandhya Vandana, Panchayatana Puja, Agnihotra, Upasana, Mantra Japa, all come under the category of Deva Yajna. Whatever you can do every day, that is one group. Third is Pitru Yajna. Pitru Yajna is doing all your Tarpanas. Amavasya Tarpana, Masha Shankramana Tarpana, and then doing this annual Shraddha if your parents are deceased, and then doing Grahana Tarpana and Mahalya Tarpana. These are all come under the Pitru Tarpana category. So he says, you can at least, he says, if you can't do anything, do Amavasya Tarpana, annual Shraddha and Mahalya Tarpana. He's giving like simple ways, if you can't do anything, at least regularly do the Amavasya Tarpana, Mahalya Paksha Tarpana, and at least do annual Shraddha. So these come under the Pitru Tarpana category. Then comes the Manusha Yajna. Manusha Yajna is basically helping others. He puts it very simply. Annadana is the highest, he says. If you can feed the poor and the needy, that is the highest Manusha Yajna. In those days, we read stories how in the Nayanmar stories and all, how they will wait for somebody. Only after they feed somebody, they're going to eat themselves. But he says, do Annadanas to the whatever capacity you have, and use other term Paropakara. He uses the Annadana and Paropakara means mutually helping a people. If you find somebody in some need, and if you can help him, offer your help. So he says, mutually helping all the humans around you will constitute the Manusha Yajna. And the finally is Bhuta Yajna. He says, taking care of the environment, animals, plants, trees, everything comes under Bhuta Yajna. And he says the simplest way you can do is, he says there is a Vedic ceremony called Vaishwadeva. And he says this Vaishwadevam, and he goes very detailed about this Vaishwadevam, but this is in the first volume. This Panchamaha Yajnas, though he gives a tell, all these Panchamaha Yajnas are not in the second volume. It is in the first volume of the book, but they refer, Periyava says, there are Munade Sulirka, Angendu Patukongan, he says. But so the Panchamaha Yajnas, whatever I'm describing, is taken from the first volume. It is not in the second volume, but he lists them here, and he specifically says, refer there for details. So I'm giving the details only from the first volume. And the Vaishwadeva procedure, he gives very detailed. And he says, if you can't do anything, do the Vaishwadevam, and that actually is the way, it's a Vedic, very simple, right? And that actually takes care of all the living other than humans. So Manusha Yajna, anything other, the plants, trees, animals, everything is covered under the Vaishwadeva ceremony. If you can't do it, then practically, feeding a cow, they say the go samrakshana is very important on the Kanchi mat, protecting the cows, feeding the cows. So all of these come under the Bhuta Yajna category. So this is what Periyava is emphasizing. As much as you can do, if you can do the Upanayana, do the Vivaha the correct way, and if you can do the Panchamaha Yajnas, that itself is not saying it's enough. That is probably what you can do. And if you do this itself, you can get elevated. So that is what he's emphasizing. And then he lists all the big yajnas, the Bhaga yajnas, the Havir yajnas, and the Soma yajnas. So those are the three major, that's why I said 7 + 7 + 7. 7 Bhaga yajnas, 7 Havir yajnas, and 7 Soma yajnas. Those 21. Those are, and even among the 21, he differentiates between Upasana and Agnihotra. He says, a lot of these people don't even know the difference between, which I didn't know myself until I read Periyava, Upasana and Agnihotra. He says Upasana is done from what he calls Smarta Agni, and Agnihotra is done from Shrauta Agni. And he tells exactly after marriage, how do you create the Upasana Agni, how you create the Agnihotra Agni. They are two different ones. The Upasana is used following these Dharma Shastras, and the Agnihotra is using the Vedas. That is what called Shrauta, means Shruti or Vedas. And Upasana is Smarta, means it is based on Dharma Shastras. So he says the Upasana Agni is there, and then the Agnihotra is there. The Agnihotra has the three Agnis, Garhapatya, Ahavaniya, and the Dakshina Agni. Those are the three Agnis. So if you can do that, that he says, Agnihotram is the greatest. They say if somebody does, Krishna in the Bhagavatam says, when Lord Rukmini and Krishna are talking together, Rukmini asks Lord Krishna, I see you are also seeming to meditate on somebody every day. Everybody is meditating on you and praying to you, but I also get a feeling that you are meditating and praying on somebody. What are you? Who are you praying? Who are you meditating on? Rukmini asks, and that's what is called Shadvandaniya. Krishna says, I am meditating and I am praying to 6 people every day. Shadvandaniya, he calls 6 people. He says, Nitya Agnihotri, Nitya Annadana, Daruna Agnihotri, Pativrata, Masopacha, Vedanta Vid, and one more thing, what he says is, one is the Nitya Annadana, means who are daily offering food to other people. He says, I am worshipping them. Daruna Agnihotri means who does Agnihotra every day. I am worshipping them. Then he says Masa Upavasa, like those who follow Ekadasi Vrata or Pradosha Vidra regularly, they fast on those days and they do prayer at the end of the day. He says even doing the Masa Upavasa. Pativratas, all the chaste women who are very dedicated to their husband, I'm praying to them. And then Vedanta Vids, who are mastered Vedantas, whoever has mastered Vedanta, I'm praying to them. And the last is Sagastra Chandra Darshi, which is the people of 80 who have lived up to 80 years, the husband and wife together, and they have seen Sagastra Ayiram Perigandavagal Abdima Tamil Sulu. Enbada Sadabhishegan, we do it in an elaborate way. He says, anybody who have lived in a Vedic way up to 80 years and have seen 1,000 Chandras, the 1,000 full moons, I am worshipping them. So Krishna himself says, I am worshipping them, and Periyava puts it into practice. Periyava follow the Shadvandani. It seems when people are who this, Periyava will honor them. If Periyava says somebody who is a Darunagnihotri, he will honor them right away because Krishna has told to honor those people. So the Agnihotra is given so much importance. So Krishna himself says, I worship the Agnihotris. So if you do Agnihotra, that is the highest. But Periyava is not, he knows the bad situation, but he's at least still know about this. So the Srauta Agni and the Smarta Agni. So the Agni Adana, there are these 7 big yajnas, which I know you can look at anywhere, but I will just list the names, just you hear the names from me. The Bhaga yajnas are Ashtaka, Stali Bhaga, Parvana, Sravani, Agrahayani, Chaitri, Asvayuji. So these are the 7 Bhaga yajnas. So if you go to the Samskaras chapter, Periyava has listed all of them. And then the Havir yajnas or the Agni Adana, Agnihotra, Darshapurnamasa, Agrayana, Chaturmasya, Niruda Pashubandha, and Sautramani. So people remember when you do the Rudram, you say Darshapurnamasa Chaturmasya Niruda Pashubandha. You tell all those during your Ranganyasa, Karanyasa. So there is listing all these Aviragnyas is being listed in the Rudram, Anganyasa, Karanyasa itself is listed. So Agni Adana, Agnihotra, Darshapurnamasa, Agrayana, Chaturmasya, Niruda Pashubandha, and Sautramani. Those are the 7 Havir Yajnas. And the Soma Yajnas are Agnishtoma, Ati Agnishtoma, Uktyam, Shodashi, Vajapayam, Atiratram, Aptoryamam. And we know Vajapayee, one of the prime ministers called Vajapayee, and who did the Vajapayee, which is the Soma Yajna. Whichever family does, they get the title Vajapayas. And if you are born in the family, you be called a Vajpayee. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, one of our prime minister, he comes from the Parampara which has done Soma Yajnas, so that they are called Vajapayis, Vajapaya Yajna. So these are the 7 Soma Yajnas. So he says, our scriptures are very, very considered. It says, these 21 Yajnas, except for the Upasana and the Agnihotra, he says, even if you do once in your lifetime, it's enough. Though it is recommended to do once every year, all these yajnas, once in a lifetime, it's enough. If you can't do once in a lifetime, at least support somebody who's doing it. So basically, those are the main, the Havir, Bhaga yajnas and the Soma yajnas, which is the, so this is the list of the samskaras. So the 7 from the Garbhadana to Chuda Karma, then the Upanayana and the Vratas, that is 1. And then from Vivaha, the Panchamaha Yajnas and these 21 Yajnas, they complete the 40 samskaras. So Periyava says, one who is able to do these 40 samskaras and who can get those 8 qualities which we previously mentioned, this 48 combination is the one which is going to take him to Brahma Loka, and he gives a sloka for that in the chapter. So now I want to conclude by telling those, he says why these are not, some people are not eligible to do that. And then the Agni in the, he gives the importance of Agni, fire worship. And he says, fire worship starts, like I said, even before the conception, the Shanti Muhurta, you are supposed to do a yajna for that. So right from before the conception of the baby itself, and the final rite is when somebody dies, you tell mantras, rub ghee in their body, and you put them in fire. We do the cremation. Everything in our Hindu religion, from before birth till death, is related to fire, he says. So the fire is a very constant association for us. And he says during Brahmachari, you do Samidadhanam. So you do, even for all the Jata Karma, you are supposed to do a yajna. Annaprasna, you are supposed to do a yajna. In Upanayana, you do a yajna. And then after every year, Gayatri mantra, you are supposed to do Gayatri Homa during Avani Avatam times. So he says, and then the Brahmachari is supposed to do Samidadhanam till he gets married. And after marriage, he does the Upasana and the Agnihotra, which are all fire related. And then even in Vanaprastha stage, when you go to the forest, they do, he says there's this Agni called Kaksha Agni, which you are supposed to take to the forest and do the fire worship even in the forest. Only the sannyasi doesn't need to touch the fire. He says only the sannyasi who has relinquished both marital life and Vedic life and was given the shika off, he is the only one who is not eligible to do fire worship, because according to Periyava, the sannyasi itself is a knowledge fire, Jnana Agni he calls. So even that person, even Krishna used the word Jnana Agni in the exact term Krishna uses in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So the Jnana, so they are considered fire themselves by their purity. So he says fire worship is linked all the way from before conception, during brahmacharya, during the grahastha, during the vanaprastha, and only the sannyasis don't have fire to deal with. But he says not everybody dies as a sannyasi. For the sannyasi only, even if the sannyasi dies, you don't do cremation for him. You are supposed to only bury him and plant like a bilva tree or a durasi tree like Periyava, Brindavanam, everybody has gone there. So he says for the sannyasi alone, you don't cremate them, you bury them, and you keep them a sacred tree on top of it, like Sadashiva Brahmandra Devs in Nerur, all these Mahans who have attained Samadhi, you don't burn them, you just cremate them and create a very sacred plant or a tree you keep on top of it. So that's what he says, except for the sannyasi only, everybody else. So if you are not a sannyasi and you die, you are supposed to undergo cremation. And even the cremation is Pitrumeda versus Brahmameda. He says, people who have done all the 40 karmas and they die, you do the Brahmameda Samskara. And for people who have not done and they are living a regular life, you do the Pitrumeda Samskara. And I want to give the example of Jatayu. In Ramayana, Lord Rama's, everybody says Lord Rama gave moksha to Jatayu. So this is a big debate. In Ramayana, Rama never declares, I am the Lord. In Krishna, he always declares, I am the Lord, I am the Supreme. Krishna is very boisterous. He never takes a chance to tell you, I am the Supreme Lord. Everybody worship me. He tells Arjuna, pray to me, think about me. Krishna is always self-centered. He doesn't, show any, any humility. He always tell, I am the Lord, pray to me. Whereas Rama always says, I am only a human. Even when Brahma appears to him, Rama, you are Vishnu, no, I am only human. Rama says, so Rama lived like a human. So the question is, if Rama lived like a human, how did he give moksha to Jatayu? You have to be a god to give moksha. So the point is, Rama knew all the shastras. So when Jatayu died, he performed the Brahmaveda Samskara for Jatayu. Remember, we have heard the story. Rama cremated Jatayu. That is very clear. Rama, as Jatayu dies, Rama does a cremation ceremony for the Jatayu. And when he does the cremation ceremony, he employs the Brahmaveda mantras. And when he employs the Brahmaveda mantras, you go to Brahmaloka. So Rama knew the mantra. So when he cremated Jatayu, so that is the Pitrumeda Samskara and the Brahmaveda Samskara at the time of death. So this is the final ceremony. So Periyava says sannyasis only don't have cremation, but everything other than sannyasi needs cremation, and you get one of those cremations depending upon the way you lived your life. So the fire is always through there. And then he says, why do some people don't have these karmas? So he comes and gives an example. We say Brahmana, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudras, all the 4 varnas we say. And Periyava goes to say, only the first 3 are eligible to have Upanayana and Vedas. The 4th caste, they say, they don't need to have Upanayana and Vedas. And Periyava gives an explanation. He says, they are supposed to learn their family tradition. Like Brahmanas are supposed to do their family tradition, which is Vedic learning and yajnas. Kshatriyas are supposed to rule the land. Vaishyas are supposed to conduct the business and agriculture. And Shudras are supposed to help every other people by providing physical services. That used to be the Varnashrama Dharma in olden days. So the Sudras are supposed to, if your father was a cobbler, you learn cobbling, how to stitch the shoes from your father. So whatever the things you're supposed to learn, you don't need to go to Gurukula. Whereas the other 3 people have to go to Gurukula to learn the Vedas. So when you're going to learn from your own father, you have to just be humble only with your father. Whereas when you go to Gurukula, when you learn, you say you get arrogance. That is why it's better to be away from the family, because when you're learning and learning more, the arrogance also will come, it seems. So to reduce the arrogance only, you have to be away from the family and you have to do bhiksha. Periyava specifically says the bhiksha, which means you have to beg every day to get your food. The bhiksha and Guru Seva, those are specifically recommended for people only in the ashrama, because learning gives arrogance, but doing Bhiksha every day and doing Guru Seva every day, your arrogance comes down. Whereas when you are in the fourth caste and you are learning from your father, there is no question of arrogance. Your father is going to put you, he's going to keep you in place. And then you are only learning the physical techniques from your father. So you no need to undergo this. And Periyava says, for these people also there is upasanas, he says. For even the fourth caste during marriage time, they're supposed to perform. So it is not that they don't have fire worship at all. During marriage and selected ceremonies, they are also supposed to do fire worship. But that itself is enough for their spiritual progress. So that's what Periyava says in the chapter. It's not like, and he gives the best example. This is the way Periyava teaches. He tells, who takes lot of medications? One who has lot of disease. This is the perfect example Periyava gives why the Shudras or the fourth caste don't need much karmas. He says Brahmanas have to do the maximum for all the rituals, all the Vedic mantra. He says it is like, so taking Brahmana, don't take your very high, everybody is equal. You have the maximum disease, so you only have to take the maximum medication. Only if you have 10 disease, you take 10 different medications. That is why Brahmana, the more karma you do, Periyava says in a joking way. So you are doing more karma because you have more bad diseases in you, whereas that guy doesn't have that bad karma. That is why he doesn't. It gives in a very joking way. He says that is why you take the example that he has less disease, he takes less medication. You have more disease, you take more medications. So these are the ways Periyava is trying to explain why some castes are exempted from doing all these ceremonies. So these are the different things. And in the Naishtika Brahmacharya chapter, Periyava again closes the loop and tells that, people, he again recaptures all these points of Swargaloka, the getting the Krama Mukti, the doing the Jivan Mukti, and who is a Naishtika Brahmacharya, because he has defined, all these Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi. Naishtika Brahmachari is one, he says, who was a Brahmachari, but he doesn't take sannyasa, but lives with his guru till the end of his life, or and just does Guru Seva even after the Guru is dead. So he doesn't need to take the kudumi and everything out. He still has to have the shika. But the sannyasi and the Naishtika Brahmachari, they don't need to do those 21 yajnas, he says. Those are the two people, because they don't have vivaha. They are also exempted from the Panchamaha yajnas. They are also exempted from the 21 yajnas. So the 21 Havir, Bhaga, Soma yajnas, the 5 Panchamaha yajnas, and the Vivaha ceremony, those 26, the Naishtika Brahmachari doesn't need to do it. The sannyasi doesn't need to do it. And he says, in the Kanchi Mutt and all the Shankara Mutts, the Brahmacharis directly take up sannyasa. That is how Shankaracharya is ordained, it seems, except for Sureshwacharya. And Periyava gives his example. Even Todakacharya, Hasta Malaka, Padmapada, 3 of his disciples, Adi Shankara directly took from Brahmachari to sannyasa. Only Sureshwaracharya lived as a Grahastha, and then he became sannyasa. So he says it is still the following in the Shankara Mutt. We directly take from Brahmacharya to sannyasa. And so he said, because once you take sannyasa, you are exempted from doing all those 26 karmas. Naishtika Brahmacharis, he says, are very rare these days. But if somebody has the mental discipline to follow it, they can also follow Naishtika Brahmacharya, and they are also exempted from doing all these 26 karmas. But he says Naishtika Brahmacharya is much harder to do. And he gives a few examples of that. But he says most of us who have all these materialistic links, he said it's better for you to go through all the stages. And he also says sannyasa is also not mandatory, because if you do all the karmas, and sannyasa is only again for few people, if you do all these karmas and all the good qualities, that itself is going to give you the ultimate state, he says. So basically he's telling sannyasa and Naishtika Brahmachari is a very high idealistic state, but it's only for some people who have the mental maturity to go through that. The rest of the people, they can follow this regular orderly life, go through the regular material life, and just follow these karmas as much as you can, and that will keep you spiritually elevated. Priyakantaya Kalyananade Enade Ertinam Sri Venkata Nivasaya Srinivasaya Mangalam Mangalam Koshalendraya Mahaniya Gunaptayam Chakravarti Tanujaya Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm done.
ரொம்ப அழகா இந்த 40 சம்ஸ்காரங்களை ஆர்டர் பண்ணி ரொம்ப அழகா சொன்னீங்க. இது நிறைய தடவை படிச்சா கூட அதை நீங்க சொன்ன போது ரொம்ப நன்னா போய் அது அந்த மைண்ட்ல வந்து உட்கார்ந்து. ரொம்ப ரொம்ப சந்தோஷம். இந்த ஸ்பெசிபிக் டாபிக் எடுத்து எங்களோட டிஸ்கஸ் பண்றதுக்கு ரொம்ப ரொம்ப சந்தோஷம். இங்க இருக்கிறவா யாராவது ஏதாவது கொஸ்டின்ஸ் இருந்தா கேட்கலாமா?
I'm not an expert. I will try to answer what I can know because I have verbatim told what Periyava has told as much as I can. And the Mari, but I try to answer if I know the answer.
Real question. So when you actually talked about the 8 gunas, you specifically called out. When you talk about the 8 gunas, you actually specifically called out the Kshama guna.
Kshama, yeah.
Yeah. Forgiveness. And you basically stated that if somebody even did wrong to you, you should be ready to Kshama. Give them Kshama. But at what point in time will you actually give them Kshama? When they actually atone and they repent, or you just, in like say, one-sidedly you just give them Kshama? How does that work?
Yeah, the actual Kshama is without even expecting their repentance. That is the highest Kshama, Periyava says. Somebody does it, with when he does harm to you, and even if he is not repentful, you are forgiving. He says that is the highest Kshama. But again, these are all very high idealistic qualities. How much you can do practically is, is the next question. But the highest Kshama is you don't even expect. And in fact, the example which is given is you take a scorpion and you put it in the hand. There is a story of that is given for one of the sannyasis. The scorpion, it seems, will be falling in the water. The sannyasi will take the scorpion every time out of the water. But every time he takes water, it will sting him. But every time he will still keep it out of the water. One disciple asked, why are you taking the scorpion? It is stinging you every time. It says stinging it is nature. Helping is my nature. That's what he says. So basically, he is not expecting anything for the scorpion. He is not even expecting the scorpion to change its behavior. He said, let it sting what it can sting. My goal is to help it. So that is the highest example of Kshama which is given. The scorpion is continuing to sting and you still continuing to help it. But, that's whether it is practical for all of us, the next question. But theoretically, that is the highest Kshama.
Thank you.
Okay.
One question.
Yes.
So this might be very offbeat, but so do we think then that Christians, they don't do rituals? So,
Yes,
but
yes.
they also, I'm sure, attain moksha, because they say that it's all different paths to God. So, so rituals are, like
No, yeah,
so,
that's a very good question. And actually, Periyava discussed this in another issue of the Deivathin Kural, not on this chapter. He actually describes this very elaborately. And he tells what is the general view. Then Periyava is very specific on this concept of okay, somebody is a true Christian. They follow Christianity's tenets fully. Because nobody is following the full Christianity tenets. That's another point. And he says even the Muslim, Periyava knows all the Quran, and he says the true tenets of who is a true Muslim or a true Christian, and they're following the full tenets of their religion. What is the difference between them and one who follows Sanatana Dharma? Periyava gives two views. He says there is the general accepted view, and then there is my personal view. He divides it in two categories. He says the general accepted view, he tells is, it is like going to school. If you do your 5th grade correctly, you do your exams correctly on the 5th grade, you will be promoted to 6th grade. And if you do your 11th grade or 12th grade properly, you get good scores, you will get into a good college. So he says each religion is like a particular school. If you follow the tenets of the school particularly well, at one stage you will come to Sanatana Dharma. So you will be born in a Hindu family. Like Krishna even says, I gave you the example, the more punyas you do, you will either go be born in an aristocrat like Ambani's son, or will be born as directly under Dikshitar's son. So basically, he says that the higher merits you have accumulated in your previous birth will make you born in a family of Sanatana Dharma. So you will have to come to the tenets of, because according to the Vedas, Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchadardaha Sanyasha Yoga Dede Shuddha Sadvaha Temaloke Tupuranta Kale. unless you know Vedanta. You have to learn Vedanta either in earth or going to Brahmaloka. Without Vedanta knowledge, and Adi Shankara puts it in Viveka Chudamani very clearly, without Vedanta knowledge, moksha is not guaranteed for anybody. And you can gain Vedanta knowledge either in earth by being born in a Hindu tradition, or you get do the samskaras and go and learn Vedanta directly from Brahma or Shiva and attain moksha. So the Periyava says the general accepted theory is anybody who follows the tenets of the religion properly over time will be promoted in their birth and will be born in a Sanatana Dharma family at some point. But then he says, my personal view is, I don't want to complicate matter. I am telling that anybody who follows Christianity fully, practice Christianity fully, he will also get the same moksha that what I get. That's my personal view, he says. So the general view is they will be born in Sanatana Dharma sometimes, and they will slowly mature to get the moksha. But Periyava's personal view is, he thinks even Christianity following itself, but I think that is more his generous nature and tolerant nature. But that is what is accepted, because without Adi Shankara is very clear in several places. And Adi Shankara has analyzed all religions. If you go to the Brahmasutra Bhashya and all, he has analyzed every, from atheism to everything. And he says, Vedanta knowledge is the ultimate. Without Vedanta, there is no moksha. And so you have to learn Vedanta somewhere. You can be a Christian and still learn Vedanta, but that is the ultimate.
நான் கேள்விப்பட்டது வந்து Christianity, the main difference between Hinduism and Christianity is இந்த உலகம், இந்த மொத்த பிரபஞ்சம் எல்லாமே படைக்கப்பட்டது மனிதர்களுக்காக. அது கிறிஸ்டியானிட்டியோட பேசிக் அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங். நம்மளோட வந்து we are just part of it.
Yeah.
Like being.
That is the idea. As Christianity is like, I want to say, 5th grade school. We don't want to tell. He says everything is a school class. We are not telling they're wrong. So that is why Periyava is telling that no religion is wrong. It is like you're in 5th grade. I'm in college. I'm a PhD. You can tell like that at the most. So now Periyava said there is a place for all religions on the earth. Each is a different school, and you go to a particular school depending upon your particular karmas. So I mean that is our view. But the Christians may have their own view about us. But that is the idea, because the like you said, the tenets of Christianity are much more simple. They are only they don't have the different the detailed tattva jnana and all what we are supposed to learn. But again, it is you have to pass that school to come to the next grade.
அது ஒரு பெரிய டிஃபரன்ஸ் இல்லையா? ஏன்னா அதை வச்சுதான் அவங்க எல்லாமே.
ஆமாமா,
நம்ம தான் வந்து ஹியூமன், நம்ம தான் வந்து முக்கியம். மத்ததெல்லாம் வந்து நமக்காக படைக்கப்பட்டது.
கரெக்ட்.
அப்படின்னு தான் நான் என்னோட அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங்.
We're not getting into this discussion of Christianity, but Christianity is a religion. It has got its own principles. And if you fall out of the Christianity religion, you will get your next promotion. That next promotion might be with Peter in heaven, or that next promotion might be born in a Hindu family. So whatever you take about it,
அங்கேயே வந்து என்ன டிஃபரன்ஸ் வருது என்னோட அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங் வந்து, so they can eat chicken, they can eat meat. அது வந்து பாவம் இல்ல அப்படின்றது அவங்களோட பேசிக் அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங்கா அப்படின்னு நான் புரிஞ்சுக்கிறேன். ஏன்னா நமக்காக தான் அது படைக்கப்பட்டது.
இல்ல சார், என்னோட ஆர்குமெண்ட் அது இல்ல சார். அவங்க பண்றது அவங்களுக்கு தப்பு கிடையாது. பட் அதனால அவங்களுக்கு மோட்சம் அல்டிமேட்டா கிடைக்குமாங்கிறது தான் கொஸ்டின். அவங்க ரிலிஜன் பிரகாரம் அவங்களுக்குன்னு ஒரு மோட்சம் சொல்றாங்க. அந்த மோட்சம் தான் அல்டிமேட் மோட்சமா அப்படிங்கிறது தான் கொஸ்டின். அந்த அல்டிமேட் மோட்சத்துக்கு they have to somehow come back to us. That is what is the generally accepted theory. Their religion is correct for. இப்ப நீங்க 5th grade ஸ்கூல்ல போய் அவனுக்கு இந்த மாதிரி மேக்ஸ் சொல்ற இதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப எலிமெண்டரி மேத்னு திட்ட முடியாது. 5th grade ஸ்கூலுக்கு அது அப்ராப்ரியேட், அதுதான் கரெக்ட். அவனுக்கு போய் நீ வந்து 5th grade பையனுக்கு நான் போய் கால்குலஸ் சொல்லி தரேன், டிஃபரன்ஷியல் கால்குலஸ் சொல்லி தரேன்னு சொன்னா அதெல்லாம் இட் இஸ் டூ மச் ஃபார் தி 5th grade. 5th grade ஸ்கூலுக்கு எது கரெக்டோ அதெல்லாம் அவனுக்கு கரெக்ட் தான். அந்த குழந்தைக்கு அந்த 5th grade ஸ்கூல் படம் தான் கரெக்ட், அதுதான் பெஸ்ட். அவனுக்கு போய் நான் டிஃபரன்ஷியல் கால்குலஸ் சொல்லி தர போனேன், அவனுக்கு நான் போய் பைனாமியல் தியரம் சொல்லி கொடுக்க போறேன்னா that is not acceptable. So that is what we have to take it in the sense it is right for that group. அவ்வளவுதான். We are not condemning that group. It is very appropriate for that group. Whether that is the ultimate, that is the question.
Thank you. நமஸ்காரம். as part of the session, எங்க எல்லாருடைய நமஸ்காரம் உங்களுக்கு. இந்த 6 நாள் ஃபங்க்ஷன் இன்னையோட முடியறது. இந்த தெய்வ ஆராதனை ஆரம்பிச்சோம் லாஸ்ட் டியூஸ்டே. இன்னைக்கு எங்களோட 6th day of the event and இதான் கன்க்ளூஷன் டே. So we want your blessings to us as well.
No, no,
And,
I'm not senior or anything like that. I'm one among you people. And ஏதோ நாம தெரிஞ்சது வந்து இந்த சுவாமி தேசிகன் சொல்லுவார் அவருடைய ரகசிய திராஸ்தாரத்துல நான் சொன்னதை கிளிப்பில்ல மாதிரி மத்தவாளுக்கு சொன்னாலே போதும். அதேதான் பெரியவாளுக்கு வந்து தெய்வத்தின் சொன்னதை சொன்னா repeat as a parrot what he said. That's all you need to do.
கண்டிப்பா மேற்கொண்டு நிறைய நாங்க உங்களுடைய இந்த மாதிரி நிறைய எக்ஸ்பிளனேஷன் கேட்கணும்னு ரொம்ப ஆசையா இருக்கும். எப்ப டைம் பர்மிட்ஸ் we will again meet some
No
other
problem.
time.
Okay, namaskaram and thank you for hosting me. And have a good.
Thank you very much, Mama. I really liked. நம்ம நிறைய பண்றோம் சம்ஸ்காராஸ் ஆனா அந்த மனசு கரெக்டா இருக்கணும். And I, that was the part, the mind and the action